This episode features author, dog lover, and rescue advocate Diane Rose Solomon. Do you have a dachshund and have questions on topics like training and nutrition? Do you want a dachshund and need help finding a good breeder or locating a great rescue? Did you have a dachshund growing up and want to share some heartwarming or funny stories? Then you're in the right place. I'm your host, Lori Leduc. Welcome to the Wiener Dog Lover Podcast, the place to be for all things dachshund. Welcome back to the Wiener Dog Lover Podcast. Today I'm speaking with the author of What to Expect When Adopting a Dog. All of my current pack are rescues. Julian and Hardy are dad and son, and came from a home that just couldn't care for them anymore. Vinny, or Baby Wiener, as he's more often referred to, joined us because the young boy in the family was allergic to him. I've been really lucky with all of my rescues. They fit right into the family right from the beginning. If you've never had a dachshund and you're thinking about adoption, then Diane's book can help you answer some of the questions you may not even realize you should be asking. I'm looking at adding a new segment to the podcast that'll help highlight various dachshund rescues. If you're involved with a rescue and can speak on their behalf, send me an email, bark@wienerdoglover.com, and put your rescue name as the subject. One of my goals for this podcast is to help dachshunds in need and to get them into their forever homes. Highlighting rescues is one small part I can do to help get dachshunds into their forever homes. I'm speaking with Diane Rose Solomon, and we're going to discuss how to bring a rescue dog into your life. Hi, Diane. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you, Lord. How are you?
Great. I guess to start off, just like we say that our rescue dogs have a story, that they all come with a little bit of a history. I'm sure that you have a history as well that led you into writing your current book to help people navigate the dog rescue process. Maybe you could share it with our listeners a little bit.
Sure. Well, it actually started about 24 years ago, which every time I say that, I'm like, wow, this has been going on for 24 years. My husband and I were going to research a breeder because we wanted to get a golden retriever. That was the breed that we had chosen. And at the 11th hour, a friend of ours, actually my husband's coworker friend, he was playing soccer one evening. And at the end of the evening, there was a dog who'd been like sniffing around the garbage can and hanging around. He assumed that this dog belonged to somebody. But everybody left. It was just him and the dog, and he realized this dog didn't belong to anybody. He had a choke collar on around his neck that was too tight, and he wasn't sure. So he took him home, and he called my husband and said, listen, I found this dog. I know you guys are thinking about getting a dog. Would you take this dog? Because I can't keep him. I live in an apartment, and I can't keep this dog. My reaction was so negative. I really had my heart set on our breed of choice, and I couldn't imagine this being an option. But my husband, who at the time had a much more open heart than me, he said, I'll just take a look. I said, fine, take a look. And the next day he took a look at this puppy and called me. He said, he's really cute. You should take a look. And so I agreed, but really reluctantly. And he brought this puppy home, and I'll never forget this. My husband driving home that night, pulling up into the driveway with this puppy on his lap. And they hadn't even gotten out of the car, and I fell in love. He was not a golden retriever. He was some kind of a mixed dog. And I fell in love with this dog, pretty immediately. And it didn't take long to realize that it wasn't about the breed of the dog, for me anyway. It was what I called the dogness of the dog. But it was kind of lucky in so many levels that I fell in love with this dog. First of all, I was so not savvy about dog rescue. I mean, it wasn't that popular of a discussion 24 years ago. I wouldn't even have known where to take him if I didn't want to keep him. I didn't even know what animal shelters were, right? Where that would be a place to take a dog. So we kept him. I fell in love, and I started telling people, "Oh, we got this dog. We'd heard the term at that point, adoption. We adopted him, and then I was introduced to somebody. I won't spend too much time on this, but I was introduced to somebody who was involved in animal rescue, and I worked with her doing some fundraising, and then I joined her board of directors for a number of years and really got involved with what was going on behind the scenes in animal rescue. I learned then this is 24 years ago, that between 12 and 16 million healthy adoptable animals were being euthanized in the shelters every year. And it broke my heart. It really, and I said, well, this is not okay. And if I just got super lucky and adopted this dog quite by accident, how many other dogs are there or cats out there that are potentially great pets that people just aren't aware of? And it was more of like an awareness thing for me. So I said, well, how can I be somebody who can create awareness? I wrote my first book, which was a children's book, and it was just a fictionalized version of the story I just told you, which became a children's book series. And then I started going into schools and doing author visits and doing a little bit of dog bite prevention during these author visits. And people started getting to know me as like the dog expert in the community. And they would call me. Friends would call me, acquaintances would call me, friends of friends would call and have questions for me about rescue and about dogs and about aging dogs and about health. And, this has been a number of years at this point, and I just had a lot of experience. We'd had a bunch of dogs at that point. I just had so much information. I realized if all of these people were calling me for information, and these are people that knew me and knew my phone number or could get my phone number, what about the thousands of people out there in the world who didn't know me, but who had the same questions? So I wrote What to Expect When Adopting a Dog. And that's kind of how we got from there to here.
Awesome. I guess the best thing, too, is working with the kids and getting them right at, the age where they're understanding that this is a really good idea, is to bring a dog that needs a home into their home, and they can help enforce that and reinforce that when they go home to their parents and maybe help get those dogs out of shelters. So working with the kids at the grassroots is a great way to start. I really appreciate that you do that.
And that was very much, part of my thinking. Like, it's one thing to teach adults about this, but as you just said, like they're the next generation of leaders, right? And the people who make choices about these things. And so I thought, what if we could teach kids at least planting the seed of the idea, And like kids bring stuff home. Parents like, what'd you do today? Oh, well, a lady came and she read us a book. And what was the book about? Dog, and I remember when my kids were little, they would come home. They still come home and teach me stuff. But when they were little, and be like, oh, we learned about electricity today, and we have to turn off the light to save electricity, just like stuff like that. So kids, they do. It's kind of an osmosis thing, too. Kids learn about stuff, and they teach their parents.
Exactly. When you have someone that comes to you, what would you suggest to someone when they start to look for getting a dog? Where should someone start?
Well, there's so many different options here, because really I start by asking, what are your thoughts to begin with? Have you ever had a dog before? Is there a breed that you have in mind? I've had people come to me and say, I want a golden retriever, but I want to adopt a dog and I don't know what to do. And I said, oh, well, did you know that there's a breed rescue for golden retrievers? And they didn't know that. And that's like one really great place to start. And then I had another friend who came to me and said, we've never had a dog before. My son is terrified of dogs. They really want a gentle, sweet little dog that like we won't be afraid of, that nobody else will be afraid of. Like a good starter dog. I don't want a dog. Like she had like a whole list. I don't want a dog that sheds. I don't want I said, well, there's a rescue here that specializes in small breed dogs, and let's find out what kind of dogs they have. So she said, well, I went there thinking I wanted this breed of a dog, but I ended up falling in love with this other kind of dog, and she ended up being fantastic, and they just completely fell in love. So it's really like what are your family requirements, right? I mean, and even before that, are you even ready for this responsibility? Because some people come like, well, I think I'd like a dog, but I travel 360 days a year. Well, unless you're planning on bringing that dog with you, maybe it's not the best time. So it's really about being responsible before you take even the first step. But then it's really starting to think about, well, what is your lifestyle like? Do you have dog experience? I mean, honestly, in retrospect, that dog JJ that I accidentally adopted, he was like a really good, gentle, sweet dog. And I hadn't had a dog before as an adult. So it was great for me to get to understand dog parenting with him. I've had much more challenging dogs since then, and I'm grateful that our first foray into dog parenting was with a slightly easier dog. It helped me sort of, learn and be able to grow with it.
Yes, hopefully you get to start with a beginner dog. I've in the same boat as you. I've had a number of dogs over my lifetime, and thankfully the harder to work with ones came after I'd had a little bit of experience, so it was a little bit of an easier introduction into the world of dog training and working with a little bit more of a challenge. How would you suggest to somebody to go about vetting, say, a rescue that they're looking at to see if it's right match, I guess, or a good rescue to be working with?
I asked somebody this question years ago, like, how do you know if it's a good rescue or a bad rescue? And she said, well, there's not really, such thing as a quote-unquote bad rescue, although there are. It's just that there's really well-run rescues and not so well-run rescues. At the core of it, most people, in most rescue groups, their heart is in the right place. Whether or not they're going about it correctly is a whole other discussion. But, it's kind of whether or not they're going to be a match for you. I mean, a lot of people will try to go to the shelter, their local shelter, and, either the dog that they're considering isn't there, or a lot of people aren't willing to go to the shelter because it can be a little bit overwhelming, and they want to go through a rescue group. A lot of times it's convenient because some of the rescue groups will have like an adoption day. Like a lot of the rescue groups where I am in Los Angeles, they have like Sunday, that like Much Love Rescue is going to be on Main Street. That Perfect Pet's going to be on Montana Avenue. And so you can sort of go there and look at the dogs that they have available. And you could ask around too. And, one of my brothers went to go adopt a dog from a rescue group. They made him jump through so many hoops to get this dog. And he said, forget it. I'm not doing that. So it's also your tolerance. Like, do you want to have to jump through hoops? Because some rescue groups have like really rigorous parameters for, who they're going to adopt to, and shelters don't. So, again, feel it out, ask around, and just try it out. Meet a rescue group. And it's really ultimately about the dog. If you fall in love with the dog, that's the dog that you believe that you want, go for it. But, if it's going to be a headache for you, then, there's other dogs. There's plenty of other dogs around. So make it easy for you.
I have heard that sometimes some of the rescues have a really rigorous screening process, and some people do find it hard to get through to the dog that they want. I guess making it easy for people is a little bit something that maybe some of the rescues should be looking at. What should the rescue be looking at in a potential pet parent? So some of the questions that they might ask you so that people could be prepared for some of the things that they might be potentially asked.
That's really good. A lot of times they want to know, like, who's the primary caretaker? Are you at home during the day? They want to know that you're aware that this is like a lifetime commitment for the lifetime of the pet. They want to know if somebody will be around during the day, or if you're working out of the home and nobody's going to be around. Like, are you planning to put a dog in a crate all day? Because that's not going to work. Are you willing to get a pet sitter or take your dog to doggy daycare if it's really going to be an extended amount of time? Because that's not fair to a dog to be home for 8 or 10 hours a day by themselves and not have a chance to at least, go get a potty break. They want to know that your house is safe and secure. If your dog's going to be outside in a yard, is it properly fenced? When our dog Ninja came to us, we had to make one of our fences higher. It never occurred to me that this wall that we had, that a big dog that was pretty spry could jump over. And so we made it a little higher, and it was just a good idea. They want to know also, like, what are you going to do with this dog if you get into financial trouble? Because that's a big reason why dogs wind up in the shelters. And so they want to know, what's your plan if this happens? They want to know if you have any other pets. They want to know if you have kids. They want to know if there's going to be, maybe your kids have a nanny. If it's your nanny, they want to maybe meet the nanny. In fact, I know of a group in New York that wants to meet the nanny. Everybody's got to come meet the dog. They want to make sure that, like, everybody's cool with the dog, that the dog's not going to get home and, like, the nanny's freaking out. So they want to make sure that everybody's on board. And they want to know, is the dog going to sleep indoors, outdoors? Is the dog going to be do you want the dog for protection? I mean, they don't want to be adopting dogs out that are going to be sitting outside, protecting your business. They want to know that this dog is going into a loving home, which I understand.
Absolutely. We want to see them go out into a family and then stay there. We don't want them bouncing back, because we know that dogs that get returned for whichever reason, whether it's a no fault of their own, often have a harder time getting readopted. So putting them in that perfect home makes sense. And I guess that is one of the reasons why they have such a vigorous screening process, is to just ensure that those dogs get out to those families and stay there.
Yeah.
What should potential pet parents be asking of the rescue in terms of, I guess, maybe the dog? So they come upon a dog that they think is going to fit into their family. What kinds of questions should they be asking the rescue in return?
Right. And these are, questions for a rescue group, for a shelter. This is a really good opportunity for you to get some information about this dog that you're interested in. Usually the shelter workers will have some information if you go to a shelter. A rescue group should have even more information because they've actually pulled the dog out of the shelter, or somehow, this is a dog that they've really committed to. A lot of dogs maybe are even living in a foster home, so they can get a lot of information. But you want to know how old the dog is, if they know. Sometimes they're wrong completely, but you can ask. You want to ask if the dog is housebroken. Obviously, if it's a really young puppy, they probably aren't yet. Do the dogs have any health challenges? Just to know. Some people are okay knowing that the dog has health challenges, but they just want to know ahead of time. Have they gotten all their shots? Have they been neutered yet? Have they been microchipped yet? Most rescue groups and even most shelters at this point will not let dogs out unless they're microchipped and neutered. Or maybe they'll let them come home with you and then they have to come back and get neutered, but you have to promise that you're going to do that. Has the dog ever lived with a family before? This is really important. My brother-in-law and sister-in-law just went to go adopt a dog. They have little kids. And they called me and said, well, what should we ask? I said, well, find a dog that's been living in a foster, with a foster family that has kids. And they did. It was so perfect. They went to this adoption day, and they didn't find any dogs that they liked the first day. And then the second day they went back, and there was this dog that they didn't see the day before. And this dog happened to live with a foster family that happened to have kids that were kind of wild and crazy, and their kids are kind of wild and crazy. And so it's been perfect. So you really want to make sure that they're good around kids and babies, and you want to know if they're reactive to other dogs or cats, because some dogs are great. They just can't be in a home with other dogs or cats. And so knowing that, if you're planning on just having one dog, then it's not an issue. You want to find out where's that dog used to sleeping? Have they been sleeping in a crate? Great. Then that's easy. Are they crate trained? Do they walk well on a leash? Have they had any training? What kind of food they eat? And you also want to ask the organization if they offer any in-home training, because some rescue groups will actually send a trainer for 1 or 2 sessions, which is kind of a nice little bonus.
That is a really good idea. What are some of the biggest misconceptions that people have about rescue pets?
Oh, goodness. The biggest one is that the dogs are damaged. I mean, that's really the biggest reason why people say, well, I'd like to adopt a dog and save a life, but I'm really concerned about their background. There's just so many reasons why dogs have been relinquished to the shelters or why they found themselves in the shelters. Quite often, it's not a behavioral issue. Sometimes it is, but quite often it's not. People also believe that if they buy a dog from a breeder, that dog's not going to have issues either. And I've seen it both ways. I've seen dogs from a breeder that have issues, and I've seen dogs from the shelter that have issues. I've seen dogs from a breeder that don't, and I've seen dogs from the shelter that don't. Most of them don't. Or if they do, it's kind of like a quirk rather than a big problem, right? And a lot of this is how committed are you to saving a dog? And if stuff comes up, are you willing to work with them? Probably the biggest one.
We talked about this a little bit about trying to figure out a dog that fits into your lifestyle. I'm also a groomer, but I worked with a gentleman, and he is actually a professional triathlete, and he had 2 bulldogs, and I questioned him. I didn't understand how someone so active could have 2 very inactive type dogs that don't require a lot of exercise, that can't exercise in the heat or the cold, that, very temperamental and responsive to different kinds of variations. And his explanation was that because he couldn't take them with him on all of his different kinds of training sessions, that having a dog that he then had to come home and walk or run for a couple more hours or, that kind of thing just didn't fit into his lifestyle. So having the 2 bulldogs was perfect. That, they did require a short little jaunt and a little bit of play, but for the most part, he could come home and lie on the couch with his dog. It made sense once he explained it. How would you suggest?
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
what kinds of things do you ask of a potential pet parent to think about when they're looking at a dog to make it sure that it's right for their lifestyle?
Yeah, I mean, I love that story so much because it's really, somebody had a lot of foresight about, what their lifestyle was like. And I think that everybody should expect that every dog, or just about every dog, is going to need at least a walk. So, even this triathlete these guys are going to need a walk, but they don't need a run, and they don't need to go for a 4-mile hike. If you're somebody who's not a triathlete, but you love to go on long hikes and you would love a buddy, then a dog that, is right there with you is like perfect. If you're pretty sure that you don't want to have to go for a really long walk, maybe even an older dog might be great. A dog that, still has like a lot of like life in them still, but they don't need a long walk anymore, which is great for that person who doesn't want to have to go for long walks, but they're happy to take their dog out. There's people that really want a puppy and they want the puppy energy and they're willing to do all of the puppy stuff. And that's great, but know what your temperament is and know what you're willing to do. If you have kids in the house, you want to know that this dog, as best you can to your ability, that this dog either has some experience with kids or has been temperament tested as best that you can before you get it, before you get this dog. If you know that you want to maybe be a therapy team with the dog, maybe you find a dog that's got a really cool disposition that could go in and be a therapy team dog with you. Or if you say, you know what, I'm really looking for a buddy that I can do something with. I'd love a dog that's got a lot of energy and we can go do agility training with because I've got time in my schedule right now and this sounds like a lot of fun for me. Then a dog that, would be great at agility, or maybe a hound dog and go do some nose work. Some people are really looking to have that kind of companionship and go out in the world and do stuff like that. And some people, like your triathlete friend, just want to be able to come home and chill with that type of breed. So it's really just knowing who you are and asking some of these questions, like, what do I want out of a dog? Just a buddy, or do we want to go out in the world?
Now, we've done the research and we've picked the rescue and we found our dog and we've been accepted. Now what? Just like bringing home a new baby, what kind of preparation should we maybe be doing at our homes?
There's a few things that you're going to want to have, and then there's definitely some home prep that you want to do. And again, not everything has to be done beforehand and not everything has to be done the minute your dog comes home. But this is just some of the stuff that you want to be thinking about. Obviously, your dog's going to need a collar, but I always recommend don't get one until you get the dog, because you might go to the adoption day or to the shelter thinking you're coming home with a big dog and you end up with a medium dog. So you don't want to have the wrong size collar. A leash, make sure it's a non-retractable leash. Like a regular 6-foot leash is perfect. Any kind of dog, identification tags. Your town might require that your dog be licensed. I know my town does. So again, that doesn't have to be the day your dog comes home, but find out what your rules are in your neighborhood and your community. You need to have bowls for food and for water. The best quality food, of course, if you're adopting a dog, find out what they're eating at the moment. You don't want to switch them away immediately because it'll upset their tummy. You will speak to your vet and find out what the best food is and speak to people about the best quality food. And then ultimately you can switch your dog little by little into a different food if that's what you want to do. You might want to have some treats for your dog because, especially if they've been homeless or living in a shelter, maybe they haven't had too many treats in the past, and that could be really fun for them. And it's great for training for your dog to have some treats. Toys are a great thing to have. Always supervise toys. One of my dogs right now, actually both my dogs, they just love to rip open fluffy toys, so they don't get fluffy toys. A lot of the bones that are out there can be dangerous because they can splinter, so you want to make sure that you're getting a kind of bone that doesn't splinter, maybe like an antler chew or something like that. And always be supervising your dog when they're chewing anything, especially if it's something that they can whittle down and make smaller. You don't want them to choke on it. You want to make sure that your house is ready for a dog, especially if you haven't had a dog before. I always recommend getting down on all fours. I know it sounds kind of silly, but checking the surroundings from the dog's vantage point, from their eye views. Like, are there lamps plugged into the wall? Can the dog be chewing on a cord, especially puppies or dogs that might still be chewing? And if they have a little separation anxiety still, you want to make sure that they can't be chewing a cord, or if it's a dog that still runs around a little bit, that if they get excited and start running around your house, that they're not going to knock over a lamp. Just things like that. You might want to have a gate inside the house, like a baby gate, so that you sort of cordon off an area so that your dog doesn't have full run in the house, especially if you're not going to be able to watch them 24/7. And same thing out in your yard. I mentioned earlier that we had to make our fence higher. You want to make sure that your fences are all high enough. You want to make sure that there's no area down below that they can dig out. I didn't do that. I didn't know to do that. My dogs actually dug out one day. And I went out to my backyard and they weren't there. And I freaked out, of course, but they were next door. They were fine. You want to make sure that there's no way for them to get out. And then there's also things like antifreeze. Like, it actually tastes good to dogs, but it's lethal. So if there's anything like that, and it's not even just stuff like that, but foods that we don't even think that are so bad, you want to make sure that they're up in a pantry, that they're a pantry that closes and maybe locks. We've had some Houdini dogs that can open pantries. You want to make sure everything's up and away that the dog can't get, whether you're watching them or not watching them. When your dog first comes home, let's see, you want to bring them to the vet, make a vet appointment, have them checked out by your vet, make sure that they're healthy, or if they're not, find out what you need to do. I always recommend signing your dog up for training. It's so important to make sure that they start behaving in your home pretty quickly the way you expect them to. It's a great chance to bond with them. Like, it helps them get socialized as well. So those are some of the basics to get you started.
As a groomer, I always recommend that people let the dogs settle in for a little while and give them a week or two to just kind of get settled and develop a little bit of a trusting relationship before they go off to their grooming session. So that's always one that I like to add. If there's any more pets in the home, how do you suggest they do an integration?
There's so many different ways to do it. We've done it a few times, a few different ways. Sometimes people will bring the dog, like once you've chosen a dog at the rescue group, you always want to introduce the dogs on neutral territory. If you have a dog at home, instead of bringing the potential new dog to your home, which wouldn't work anyway because they probably wouldn't let you take the dog, bring your dog to meet that dog. And it's not always going to be a match made in heaven immediately. You just want to make sure that it appears that everything's pretty cool. Our most recent dog, Ninja, when he was brought to our house, we got really lucky. The rescue group, they were pretty far away, and they said, we'll bring the dog to you. So I said, great, let's not meet at the house. Let's meet a few blocks away so that it's, not just neutral territory. So our other dog, Gonzo, I was walking him, and this dog was approaching him, and he was really weird with him. But Ninja was totally cool, and within like a minute, they were fine, and we were walking together, and then we brought both dogs back to the house to play, and it was like instant love. But it was really important that they got a chance to meet on neutral territory. And when people have cats, now some dogs are fine with cats immediately. Some dogs are not. My dogs right now, we can't have cats. Forget it. And I say that, and yet I have a friend who also said that, but then she got a cat and was able to beautifully introduce her cat to her dog. It took weeks and so much commitment and so much patience and like vigilance and making sure that the dogs were completely separated from the cats, and then they could see each other, but they couldn't get at each other. It was like a whole big thing. But it's possible, but that requires a whole other. And again, some dogs just are fine with cats from the get-go.
what might be some of the basic things that people should be looking for once they actually get their dog into their home? So maybe in their first week, what kind of behaviors might they be watching for to make sure that they get on like early on in the dog's integration into their family?
A lot of times you meet a dog in a shelter or at an adoption day or in another situation, and they're acting a certain way, and then they come home, and whether it's the first week or the second week, maybe they just got neutered or got spayed, and they were pretty calm when you first met them, and they come home and all of a sudden they're feeling better, or they start to feel secure in your home because now they've got a home. They might start displaying some different behavior, which might not be a bad thing. It might actually, like, you could see them get more fun, and you might say, wow, I didn't know that you had this whole fun side to you. But you can expect that your dog will be different. They will probably be a little nervous, as I think anybody would be the first day. They come to your house. Oh, my goodness. I remember the first day that Ninja came to our house. He was so excited, and he went to drink water, and he drank so much water, and he just, spilled it everywhere. And I was like, oh, no, is this dog going to be, the messiest drinker ever? And he's a big dog, too, so we're talking about a lot of water. But it was just, that day and that excitement, and he actually knows how to drink water like a normal dog. And I was willing to live with it and just have towels ready for cleanup and stuff. But, I was grateful that it wasn't quite as messy as it might have been. But yeah, you might find different behavior than what you first saw. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier, that it's really important to, if you don't have a trainer yet, plan to sign up your dog for a dog training class and or bring the trainer in, maybe not the first or second day, kind of what you're talking about before about grooming. Let them have a couple days to settle in, which also gives you some more information, like what kind of behavior is this dog doing that seems odd to me or you don't like. Then this way you can say to the trainer, oh, they're doing this. How do we help correct that? Or I don't want this to become a problem. What do we do now to help nip that in the bud? So that's what I would recommend. The trainer is great.
What are some cautionary things that you might want us to discuss about introducing your new pet to children, whether it's yours or to others?
There's so much education required there, and it really depends on the age of the children. If they're really little, the onus is 100% on you. If they're not so little, it's still very much on you to keep them safe. Teaching the kids dog body language, there's some great programs out there. I really like one called The Family Dog. Highly recommend that. And they have great videos and a great training program that teaches kids. They're dog trainers, and they teach kids how to learn about body language. And this is really also for parents, too, because a lot of dog parents and kid parents, they don't know dog body language, especially if they're new to them. And, dogs are slightly different. They're all, one dog looking one way means that they're upset, but another dog looking that same way doesn't necessarily mean that they're upset. So it's kind of a case-by-case basis as well. When we first brought our baby home, we already had dogs and cats. We were really clear that we were not going to make our dogs into second-class citizens at that point, that they were going to continue to be part of the family. And when we brought the baby home, first we had brought the baby blanket home from the hospital so that the dogs could smell the baby. And then when the baby came home, they were like, oh, we've smelled that before. And we said to dogs, this is your baby. And we introduced them, and we never made them go out. I mean, we never let the dogs be in the same room as the baby unattended. And we were very careful. But it's really important, I think, to keep everybody integrated. Now, having said that, you have to be vigilant. And when you can't be vigilant, you make sure that the dog is not where they can get a child, just to be safe. And so it's really a matter of educating and teaching kids, especially now. So then what happens is if you have a great relationship with your kids and your dogs in the house, sometimes kids get a false sense of, oh, great, all dogs are going to be like my dog, which is not the case. But then there becomes the education process outside of your home, how, we need to teach our kids that we always ask another person that has a dog if we can pet them, that we're not going to assume that that dog is as friendly, especially with kids, as your dog is at home. So then you teach the kids how to ask, is it okay to pet your dog? And how should I pet your dog? And just so that everybody is paying attention and asking the questions, and that the kids understand that outside dogs are, dogs that you meet outside of the home are very different than the dogs that you have in your home that you love.
I think that's a great tip. So often having a good dog at home gives kids a false sense of security. And when they do meet dogs outside, they just assume that they're all the same and can get into trouble. And I always explain to people as well that you have to think about protecting your pet around children as well. Like you have to protect, you're there for your pet. They can't speak. They can't say, I'm not comfortable in this situation. So you really have to be the one that does the protection to make sure that they don't get into any trouble as well.
Yeah, no, thank you for that reminder. Because, a lot of people think, oh, it's really cute that the kid's going to ride the dog like a horse. No, that's not okay. And we don't pull tails, and we don't yell, and we don't stick our fingers in the dog's eyes and the nose. And here's how we pet the dog. And no, it's, thank you for that. And the minute a dog expresses any kind of behavior like that's not the way I like it, you let the dog be. And, especially if it's a really young kid, it's training, it's teaching, it's practice. And thank you for bringing that up, because it's really important that you're not just keeping the children safe, you're also keeping the dog safe.
Sometimes I'll tell people too is that they need their own space. And I compare it to kids is that, they have their own room and they can go there and hang out and be by themselves. And whether you're using a crate or a space, I always tell people that you have to teach your children that when your dog is in their safe space, that's their safe space, that you can't play in it, you can't poke at it. It's that if they've decided to go into their safe space, that it's for them only. And once the kids learn that, they respect it pretty quick. What are some sort of recommendations to suggest to working to build a trusting relationship with your new addition? Sometimes, like we've said, that dogs come in that may or may not have had issues, and how can people really work at developing that relationship so that they have a long-term loving relationship with their new addition?
Well, whether or not they come with issues or they don't come with issues, I feel like developing a bond early on is so important. When your dog first comes home, spend as much time with them as you can. Even if you're going to work, the next day, whatever you can do to make that transition for your dog easier. Take your dog for long walks. It gives them a chance to get to know their neighborhood. It gives them a chance to get to know you. You get a chance to get to know them. You're spending time and you're bonding, and you're also explaining to the dog when you're walking them that, I'm in charge. I've got this. We're good here. And the dogs like that sense of security that, good, you're taking care of it. And so when you're teaching the dog that you're in charge, that you're an adult, that you're the alpha in that pack between you and the dog, they start to trust and feel much more comfortable with you. Training, as I mentioned earlier, is so important because it allows that bond to continue, and it allows you to nip some of those behaviors in the bud if there are any, and you get to be training your dog to behave the way you would like them to behave in your home. And then some of those activities that I mentioned, some people, no interest at all. But if you're looking for other ways to bond with your dog, and you know that they might enjoy something like nose work or dock diving, or maybe they're a Frisbee dog, there's so many ways that you can go participate in activities with your dog. These are great ways for you to bond and for your dog to expend some energy, because a lot of times that's a big part of it. A well-exercised dog is a happy dog. My dogs get walked. They come home, they're tired, they sleep, they're not making a mess, they're not chewing stuff up. It's like I know when they need to go out for a walk because they start getting antsy. It's like, okay, we're going for a walk now. So
we've kind of discussed this a little bit about working with senior dogs, but why would you suggest to someone that they might consider a senior dog or a dog with a disability to bring them into their family?
First of all, some people would say they just know. I don't want a puppy. I definitely want an adult dog. And in fact, their heart is saying to them, gosh, these senior dogs are in the shelter. There's a good chance that they did have a home at one point, and maybe their owner passed away or could no longer care for them. Or again, it goes back to there's a gazillion reasons why those dogs end up in the situation they end up in. But to be able to give a senior dog a home, whether they've got a day left, a week, a year, 2 years, some dogs, they come to you senior, but they've got years and years and years left. they're done with their craziness. They're not chewing up your house anymore. They're mellow. Usually they're not requiring a lot of effort and walking on your part. So it's like a lovely, lovely way for you to like help out a dog. And same thing goes with dogs with disabilities. Some of them, really special needs. Actually, some people say, you know what, it's pretty easy to fall in love with the puppy at the shelter. But what about these other dogs that have issues? Like, I could fall in love with that dog, and I'm willing to accept that responsibility of that issue because I fell in love with that dog. And people just open their hearts, and it's really quite beautiful. And you're really just, you're doing a beautiful thing when you rescue a dog, period. And then when you can, like, really, if you're willing to rescue a senior dog or a dog with some special needs, it's just remarkable and gorgeous.
I can attest to that. I did have a blind, deaf German Shepherd mix that I had for a number of years, and he was born that way, and he was definitely one of my biggest teachers. So having a dog with any kind of a disability it can bring a lot to your life. You'll be surprised at how much they can teach you.
Good for you.
Yeah, he was pretty special. We can't discuss rescue without discussing some of the reasons or some of the ways that one decides to rehome their pet. What are some of the things that you might consider that might make the process easier and safer if you were going to surrender your pet? How would you make sure that he or she gets into the right hands?
Of course, this is always something that could come up. First of all, some rescue groups have it in their contract with you that if you are going to relinquish your dog, that you send the dog back to them because they want to have the opportunity to find a new home for that pet. And they don't want you doing anything like putting the dog up for sale on the internet, or even giving the dog to a friend, a trusted friend. They want to be able to take the dog. So you want to check your adoption contract carefully to make sure that that's what they want to do or not want to do. So that's the first thing. You do not want to put your dog up for adoption on Craigslist or anything like that because you don't know who's going to be taking your dog. If you don't have the restriction of a contract with a rescue group, feel free to reach out to your friends and family members and let them know that you're in a pickle, whether it's that you're moving somewhere that can't take dogs or something like that. And there's a lot of programs now for people who think that they need to relinquish their dog because they're in a financial pickle. And even if it's just temporary, there's a lot of organizations now that can help you through those times, whether it be financial or there's a lot of programs out there that are offering resources, trainers they'll send to your house. So sometimes you think you need to rehome your dog, but you don't. You just need a little boost. So ask around, ask the shelters, ask the rescue groups, because they'll know about these programs. And so if it's something that you're thinking, I'm not sure because I think I might need to rehome my dog, ask around first as your first line of defense. And then the second choice would be, to ask a trusted family member or friend. And please don't bring your dog to a shelter unless it's the absolute last choice, and make sure that it's a shelter that isn't going to be euthanizing your dog, that will plan to find a home for your dog.
How can someone get a hold of your book so that if they've got more questions, they want to get a good read on how they should go about bringing a dog into their family, where should they look to get their hands on a copy of your book?
Oh, great. Well, for more information, they can check out my website. And again, my name is Diane Rose Solomon, and that's the website. And I'll spell that out. Diane, Diane, Rose, Rose, Solomon, Solomon, DianeRoseSolomon.com is the website. My books are also available on Amazon. So What to Expect When Adopting a Dog is the title of this book that we've been talking about. Very kind of you. Thank you.
I did buy it and read through it, though it was very informative, and it'll be something I can refer my clients to when I have people who are looking at adopting a pet. And I work with Alberta Dachshund Rescue in Calgary, so it's also something that I'll refer to some of the people looking at adopting a dachshund as well.
Wonderful.
I have a couple of questions that I'm going to end with. Do you have a book that you could recommend other than your own? We definitely recommend yours, but something that maybe in your history, in a dog-related book, a good reference for them?
It's not so much a reference book, but it's phenomenal book. And it's called Rescue Road. It's about a man who outfitted a truck so that he could drive down from Ohio down to the deep south, where there's a lot more dogs in need of homes. And then he brings the dogs up to the northeast, where there's rescue groups that are waiting for the dogs. That they have already homes. Dogs have been adopted out by people who never met the dog in person, but based upon a photo that they've chosen to adopt this dog. But the story of how this man does this, and he has somebody in the rig with him, and he has volunteers at rest stops to make sure that the dogs get watered and get potty breaks and whatnot. It's an amazing story, and you really get an insight as to what is still going on in the dog rescue world, and also learning more about animal transport, which is becoming much more popular as well. So it's a great book, a great story, and I love it, and I recommend it.
Perfect. Our final question is, we know that dogs are such amazing teachers, and so what is something that you've learned from either one of your own dogs or from working with other dogs that you'd like to share with us?
I think it really goes back to my very first, the story I first told you about how we accidentally adopted JJ, and it was not my intention to adopt a dog. I didn't know about it, and so I've learned to be open-minded. I've learned to be open-hearted. I've learned not to judge, because I was, ready to judge this dog that, I didn't know, and I ended up falling in love. And so he really opened my heart to to all of this, and opened my heart in general. I learned to open my heart.
That's awesome. That is so amazing, because that's exactly what they do for us, isn't it? They really do truly open our hearts. That is all that I have today. Diane, thank you so much for all of the information and for all that you do to help dogs find their forever homes. We look forward to hearing some feedback from some of our listeners, in that they've been able to look through your book and then maybe find the dog that was meant to be for them and their families, and that maybe we can get some of those dogs out of shelters or rescues and into some forever homes by listening to what we had to say today. So thank you again very much.
My pleasure, Lori. Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed my chat with Diane. I know that making a decision to add a dog to your family is a really important one. And whether you're looking at a dachshund or another breed, it's really important to think it through and be prepared. Diane's book may help you with that final decision. I love rescue, but you have to remember that when it comes to working with rescues, it can take time. It needs to be the right dog for the right home. It doesn't always work on a first-come, first-served basis. As I mentioned, I work with Alberta Dachshund Rescue, and I'm always happy to answer any questions you might have about adding a rescue wiener dog to your pack. If you have a wiener dog story, an event, or a topic you'd like to see us cover, send an email, bark@wienerdoglover.com. Follow us on Instagram, wiener_dog_lover_, or Twitter @lovingwienerdog, or find us on Facebook, Wiener Dog Lover. Never miss an episode. Head on over to wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe, and you'll be notified every time we put out a new podcast. I'd also be grateful if you would leave us a review. Until next time, Wiener Dog Lovers, this is Lori, Sheba, and the Wieners, signing off.